and welcome back for our live stream, our weekly topic with Ned and Kelly and myself to tackle the topic of settling in your marriage. And we are really excited to talk about this topic because it's really many topics in one. Because it doesn't really matter what your problem in the marriage is, how that shows up, like your unique struggle. Settling is really just accepting it and not moving out of that place of stagnation with it. And it's almost just like resignation and deciding, from either a place of hopelessness or not knowing what to do, that it just has to be that way. And that it's almost like giving up on what you really desire in your marriage. So this is really important because we talk to people every day who are settling, right? They're really unhappy. Or they might even be they might be acutely unhappy to the point of being distressed, or they might just be low grade, unfulfilled and feeling like there's got to be more to life than this.
Definitely.
And some are even on the brink of divorce because they've just been so inactive in their situation to make a difference. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of have a roundtable discussion on this topic to really look at what is settling exactly, why do people settle, how does this show up in different ways in the relationship, and then what can you do about it? As always, we kind of follow that structure. But in terms of what settling is, most people know what that means, but really, I want to just be clear that it's ultimately no matter who you are or what your problem is, because you might have, some people have different criteria than other people, and it's not really up to one person to decide if another person is settling. There's no one clean line where you can decide if you cross that line, you're settling. It's a really individual choice. It's basically for you, you're settling if you're accepting less than you know is possible. And you're settling if you are accepting things that for you are really unhealthy. Or if you're staying stuck or deciding on some unconscious level that where you are is where you're going to stay, even though you know that it's not in line with your life dreams and it's not in line with the legacy that you want to leave as a person in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And usually it's unconscious and it will crop up in consciousness for a moment and then you'll just go back into this almost like sleeping like state, right? It's just this unconsciousness of responding to the needs of the day and forgetting what your life dreams are or what your purpose is or what kind of parent you want to be or what kind of human you want to be. And if the relationship is not serving that on some level, you're settling.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree, or how would you define settling?
Well, for me, when I think about people settling, especially from the conversations I've had with many of our clients, there's this feeling, and I notice this with the people who've been in relationships the longest time, who have been feeling this way for a really long time, 10 to 15 years, it really shows up. But I notice that they feel like there's a void in terms of the relationship. There's really something missing. And they just can't identify it, but it's this feeling that it's constant, or they hear this voice that is this saying to them, it's a constant reminder of, there's got to be more to this, than this right here, this relationship. There has to be something more, and there's this huge fulfillment problem, it's not, they just can't feel it, and they don't understand what the problem is, why they feel that way. And
there might even be some guilt around it, right? Because if the relationship is not horrible,
you're right. Yeah.
They might be if there's anything wrong with my spouse, I just don't feel alive in the marriage, and then they feel
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes it could even be, it's a sadness though, to the point where it actually, it really permeates, your being at its core and becomes such a problem that, it begins to affect you in different ways. It can cause depression, especially when you just really, you have a hard time emoting or talking about how you feel, because you have a hard time. Like you said, it's not really about your partner so much as you're just trying to figure out, why am I feeling like this? And you just don't have those answers,
Yeah, that's such a good point, because it can be this just sort of low grade thing that happens year after year until it gets to the point where it's really a sense of sadness.
Yeah.
And when people reach a certain age, like midlife or later, where people start to really think, it becomes an existential crisis almost. I can't imagine that the rest of my life is going to feel this way. Is this all there is to life?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, and then it shows up in different ways. But one of the questions that pops up in my head when I'm talking to somebody who is settling, and I have been in situations where I've settled as well, is why do people settle, right? Why do people do that?
Wow.
I think it helps to understand what's underneath it, because we're not judging it. It has such a negative connotation, but I'm not judging it at all. It's really just about understanding. Sometimes it's really part of just not being fully awake in life.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is at the root of that?
I think that at the root of why people settle, and there's you can look at any topic and from the macro level and all the way down to the micro level. I tend to look at things, at the depths of their being. And so I think that people settle because we're just coming out of this time where a relationship has really undergone a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in a place where both women and men want closeness, they want intimacy, they want these things. Women have really come a long way, but we still have the values and the relationship modeling of our parents and our grandparents, and happiness was not at the core of relationship in the past. That
right. People want more out of marriage now.
Yeah.
And there's no question if they should want more out of marriage.
Yeah.
But is that selfish to want more out of marriage? Right. Isn't that what marriage is on some level? If you think of like what you said, Kelly, looking at parents and grandparents as a model.
Yeah.
The relationship as a mirror for spiritual growth was not part of that model, right? Yeah. So if you're longing for more and you're wanting more transparency and emotional connection, it almost feels selfish. Like, well, my grandparents didn't need that and they were fine.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's that's why. It's because what was modeled for us was not this great picture of this deeply connected spiritual, growth-inducing relationship, marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what the model was. Well, but that's what people want, right?
Yeah.
That's what people want, and it's like people every day are settling for the okie doke in relationship, and then they look around 10, 15, 20 years later and go, why does this feel so disconnected? Well, honey, because you've never learned the skill set, the mindset. You've never had the support. You've never gotten the healing. That's why you don't have the relationship that you want, because you don't have the skills to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
What is it modeled for you?
Exactly. And so in marriages has been just sort of like the foundation for our lives. But we don't nourish it. So it's like, it's our home base. It's the place where everybody comes together. It's like it's like a unit in an economic system, right? So people use the family life as a springboard for going to work, going to school, coming home, and doing it all over again. And so it's easy just to get caught up in the daily life and expect marriage to support that all those years without putting anything into it. Because like you say, that wasn't modeled to us.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's unfortunate because I feel like we put so much planning in every other aspect of our life, education. And I think we talked about this before, but the one thing that it shows up as the most important part of our life that can have the biggest effect on us in terms of outlook, how we show up, how we relate. We don't learn about how there's nothing that shows us and talks to us about how to invest in that part of ourselves.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because
it's become more that way. But
we go years and years before we realize, oh shit, I wanted to get married. I really don't even know why though. I just saw someone else do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, okay, really, did you put any real thought into what that would look like? Mm-hmm. How you would create, with that person, what does that foundation really look like, and how do you build upon that and really make it strong? So it's a huge part when I see and have for many, many people. And like I said, you get to a point, so many people get to a point where they feel lost. They just don't see a way out of it. And that's the saddest part, because, you know, when you get to it, it's almost just a desperate place. You know, it would be horrible to wake up every day just not having any direction about my life, about, you know, how I'm going to spend time with my wife, my kids, just no planning whatsoever, and just looking over at this person, and it's just a warm body in my bed. And that's all this person really has become to me. That it's just so really sad.
Yeah, it is sad. It's that profound disconnection that makes people feel like they're settling. But what's interesting about what you said is that settling is really defined in the context of what the purpose of the relationship is to you.
Exactly.
If your reason for getting married is to have a soulmate and a partner in life and a best friend and all those things, and that you have shared life dreams and a shared purpose, then you're settling if your relationship isn't somehow a vehicle for that.
Exactly.
If you're getting married because you just want companionship and to have children, and you're fine with it just being the way that it was for our parents and grandparents, that's fine too. Then you're not settling if that's part of what you want. But the lack of direction, what you're saying, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know if you're settling or not. So you really have to know, what do you want, in order to be able to use that as a yardstick. The other thing too is that a lot of people think they're settling when really they're not really doing anything to create the relationship that they want, because we've been taught that relationships are going to just kind of like from the outside in entertain us and stimulate us and fulfill us and make us happy from the outside in. And when they stop doing that, then we go, oh, nothing's really going on. I feel like I'm settling now.
Yeah.
Really, you're also not behaving in the ways that you were at the beginning of the relationship, and it wouldn't be that hard to create what it is that you actually desire, and you wouldn't have to settle. But I think what we're talking about is settling for a relationship either that could be improved with a little bit of effort, or settling for a relationship with somebody where you know for sure your life dreams don't align.
Right.
Or if you're dealing with someone that can't grow with you, or you don't have the same purpose and you just can't have what you want with this person, then settling is just in and of itself staying with that person.
Right.
So there are two different ways of settling. I'm kind of imagining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the other unfortunate part about that is it begins to affect other areas of your life. I mean, 80% of people, and this is just one aspect that I'm talking about, when we talk about retirement, and we talk about if this just is affecting your relationship, what about your financial well-being and the health of taking care of your family? 80% of people end up dead broke by the time they retire. Now, why would if there are books out here that can show you how to be wealthy, or how to set up for yourself and be successful, and you don't utilize those, where does that come from? Okay, where do these things, at its core, where does it start? Okay, because your relationship is a lot like your outlook about what you're able to, the potential you have to create for yourself in the way of finance. So it's the same thing with your marriage. How have you learned how to create what you want in your marriage? And what is it going to look like when you retire? Is it going to look like
one thing is how you do everything? That's that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, the whole idea that you're not taking action, this brings us to why people settle. A lot of times it's because they don't know how. They don't even know, like, oh, there's probably a better way and I could learn it.
Exactly.
Or they don't have confidence that they could learn it. They think that's for other people. Or they just feel really hopeless and defeated. Like,
Or, I mean, they're different. Yeah, there are different reasons. Some people settle for the kids. I mean, there's so many cases, well, I just, I'm going to wait for the kids to grow up, and then you're going to do what?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What does that look like if you're not planning? What are you going to do? A lot
of people don't want to shake things up. Settling, the whole word settle is like, you imagine things getting really sedentary, just settling to the bottom, right? Shaking things up feels scary to people. Not settling is like, well, then I have to make changes. That is scary. Sometimes people just really are afraid about their own capacity or the impact that will have.
So fear is a big part of it.
And here's the other thing too, and this is a big one. This is some prolific shit here, okay? When you feel stuck in your life, rest assured that you have settled into being comfortable in that place, in the place that you are, and you're too grounded in that place of just being settled. And so if you're stuck, then you're settling. You're settling for that part of your life. I mean, it can be in any different area of your life, but if you're feeling stuck in your marriage and you are not happy, then you are settling.
That's such a good point. And on some level, it's a choice you're making, even though it might not be conscious. And that's kind of a really important thing to highlight, is that it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly.
If you're wondering, like, what am I settling? What does that mean? Like, let's talk about what that looks like. I mean, because it could be a lot of different things, right? It could be somebody might be settling for, they have a good marriage in other ways. Like, let's say they're a good team in terms of the logistics of the household, but they have no passion. They've got no intimacy. You know, some people are settling for, like, it's respectful, but it's loveless, sexless. What else? What else do people settle for?
Well, I just want to make the point saying this first, before we actually get into that.
Yeah.
Everyone's relationship dynamic is different. What makes people happy together, you know, they can only say how that works for them and if they're truly happy in that. What we're talking about are people who want closeness, healthy, fulfilling relationships together. You know, I know there are different dynamics for different couples. You know, every especially in this day and age, everybody's on, you know, they do different things now. But I want to be specific about what we're talking about. You know, when we're talking about the couples the people and that want to be in healthy relationships. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly. And that they want to have a reciprocal mutual relationship with shared values, unifying, whatever those are. That's a good point.
One big way that it shows up with people settling that I see, and I work with a lot of women, is unhealthy or toxic communication between them and their spouse. And what I see a lot with women, and I've been there myself, is being in a situation where there is a lot of verbal abuse. There's a lot of
contempt.
Contempt, resentment, anger being projected towards them. And this dynamic happens and it continues because no one is, you know, standing up for themselves and not putting up with it. But that is a big one that a lot of women settle for, and men too, if they're because they're in the dynamic also. There takes two of this toxic, unhealthy, communicative, you know, place that they're in. And it's just, it leads to the end always when you stay in those places. It's not healthy.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you have, like, the alternative isn't necessarily that you always have to leave. But you have to do something, like leverage what you have, draw some lines and some boundaries. You know, really proactively create a culture of communication that you need to have and hold that line. And if that doesn't work, well, then you have more information to make a decision.
Yeah, because women stuck in these situations find themselves in a lot of pain, right? Like anxiety ridden, and they're sad because their husbands treat them
They feel bad about themselves.
Yeah, and they start to direct it at themselves, thinking that there's something wrong with them. When that's not the case at all, honey. You just have someone who's not treating you right or talking to you correctly, and you need to correct it. But women do, they turn inward and they go, okay, you know, I did something bad or I did something wrong. And that's the wrong question, I think, to be asking.
Yes, right. I agree. And sometimes people are verbally abusive, not because they're an abusive person, but because they grew up with that, and that's just what they know, and that's just how they communicate. But if you can take the lead on that and give an alternative and insist upon an alternative, a lot of times people can really come out the other side and be like, oh, yeah, I don't that is making you feel bad. I'm going to learn new ways of communicating. And you can get unstuck and you don't have to settle and you don't have to leave that person. You know,
Right.
the only time it gets really dicey is if you're dealing with an abusive person.
Right.
The structure of their personality is abusive. Then it doesn't matter what you do. You know,
Right.
then
Yeah.
it's really just, you kind of have to leave in order to have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But that's a really good, that's a common one. Another thing I noticed too is that there's just a lot of like things that bug you, but you're never talking about it. And there's just a lot low grade resentment, and that people are settling for that undercurrent of resentment or unspoken truths. It's just like settling for all of this tension that
Yeah.
lives between you in this biosphere that we create in a relationship.
Yeah.
And just by ignoring it and not speaking, and not by like doing the house cleaning, not opening the windows and letting some fresh air in. That's a way of settling too.
Yeah.
And it's not always with overtly toxic relationships, but more like just the undercurrent of like, we haven't really tended to things.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of now.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that undertone or current can often show up. You know, we had this discussion. I think we were talking at one point this week where we talked about the couples who kind of get into this mundane kind of rhythm of, you know, settling into the evening, and it's just, you know, the wife is sitting with her, you know, glass of whatever she drinks, and she's just staring off into space, and the husband's over here reading the paper, or he's on his phone looking at the news, and that's very
disconnection.
common.
That's what I think.
You know, it's very common, and it's very unfortunate because I almost feel like it's so common that people almost expect it to be that way.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? And that when you create, if what are you doing for your children? What type of life are you affecting people around? You know, kids. You're not teaching them how to communicate. You're not talking. I mean, you're not showing them
What's
the
possible
skills that they need to just get out and just learn about themselves, let alone learn how to work with other people. You're not helping the situation at all. So I just want to really understand, you know, how damaging it is to the relationship, you know, and how it permeates just throughout the rest of you know, every other part of their life.
Yeah. Indifference. I think that's what we were talking about the other day, babe. Indifference, right? When you get to that place of indifference in your marriage. And I've been there in my, you know, in my previous marriage. And it's a horrible place to be because it's like, you know, and indifference could, you know, be different levels of indifference. But when you get to the place of indifference where you just really could give a shit, like, I don't care. I don't want to be around you, really. I'm just here. I guess it's just going to be this way. I'm going to go do your thing, okay, because I'm not interested in being around you. I'm not interested in communicating with you, and I really could give.
Yeah, right.
Indifference.
What's the point? When I hear that, I think, well, what's the point then?
Yeah,
exactly.
And once you hit indifference, that is a danger zone. It's not a matter of if, but when you will be divorced. And I can tell you that for a fact. I've seen it 100 times.
Yep. Well, because indifference eventually breeds contempt as well.
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like a precursor of contempt, like a milder version of contempt.
I feel like contempt equals indifference.
I think of contempt as even more actively like there's animosity, whereas indifference is like, I just don't care about you. But I see what you mean.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, one is like completely active, like shooting daggers at someone and like rolling your eyes at someone and scoffing at what they're saying. And like, you're just so ridiculous that you even said that. That's what I think of as contempt. But I think that they're both really different forms of the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is that you really don't hold your spouse in high regard, that you don't really care about them, that their presence doesn't add anything to your life. Because why else would you be indifferent? You know,
if you know, based on what you two just said, if I were to measure those two in terms of settling, like you said, becoming very sedimentary, indifference is probably at the lowest level, because at least if you're in the place of showing contempt, there's some passion. Even if you're mad. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to the place where there's nothing going on, there's no place to start for repair. There's nothing. You can't communicate to me where it is you have a problem. Because
you have no stake in it.
None.
At least if you hate your spouse, there's something at stake for you.
Exactly.
There's something under threat for you that makes you so hateful.
It's
like indifference is like worse in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're both bad. Okay.
Yeah, they are.
The point is that we're getting really technical here, but it really is just a matter of what are you settling for? And there's all kinds of different things that you can settle for. Not having boundaries for yourself, just not, like some people settle for partnerships where there's never any personal accountability. The person will never say they're sorry for anything, even though they're clearly in the wrong. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah. And another way, speaking of no personal ownership, right? Like people who find themselves in unhappy, marriages and unhappy marriage dynamics. And, it's all about their spouse. It's the spouse's fault. They're making me feel this way. And it's like, no, they're not, honey. Take ownership, because that is truly when you take your power back and you can figure out what is underneath the anger, the resentment. Why are you pointing the finger? Because anytime you're pointing the finger, anytime you're complaining, that's something in you and you are projecting it onto your partner. You have to look inside. You have to take personal accountability, stop blaming your partner, and really figure out how you have contributed to this mess that you're in, that you have co-created. And there's something for you to learn in it. And
so, it doesn't take away accountability from the other person, because you could be right about everything about your spouse that you're complaining about. You could be 100% right, but it doesn't actually, you still lose by focusing on that, because that's not where your power resides.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Your power resides in 100% ownership. Could your spouse,
the situation that you're in, not ownership of their behavior, but ownership of the situation that you're in.
Exactly. Because you always play a part in the situation that you're in.
Yeah. Always. Which is the good news. That's the good news. Sometimes people don't want to admit that, but it's like, no, that's good, because that shows, that you actually have power and choice.
Exactly.
Totally. And that's a good thing.
And
that's really what settling is, sort of like not recognizing a failure to fully own the power that you have to create change one way or another, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Another way that I notice that it comes up with people is that people will be like, well, we're fine, we don't really argue, but there's no joy. There's no fun. There's never any laughter.
That's a big one, yeah.
And there's nothing horrible happening, but there is if there's never any joy, right?
I think that that's pretty damn horrible.
Yeah, right. But people get so used to it. Like, well, we're functioning.
Yeah.
The kids are doing well in school. We're doing well at work.
You're having sex.
Like I said earlier, it's when it becomes that common, there's a problem.
Yeah.
If this is what people have to look forward to, that's a problem.
I find that sometimes people get desensitized almost to the lack of connection. Like, people are like plugging into a dead socket and they don't mind, because they're just used to it. Like the frog in the water analogy. You just like, it's been that way for so long, and it might have happened so slowly that you didn't even recognize it. And it takes some kind of experience that will have you reflect and go, wait a minute, I didn't actually want this. I'm living a life I wouldn't have chosen if somebody had asked me, would you choose this? I would have said no. Yeah. But here I am. That's another way that shows up too.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to quite a few people on the phone, and there's just countless times, I'm talking to a person who seems like they're awakening to something, in their marriage. It's just this, they have an epiphany, after 20 years. Like, there's got to be something more. I thought it was going to be more. I'm just like, after 20 years, after 20, 30, 40 years of doing this, it's just like a light bulb turns on. Yes. And I'm just like, what are you waiting on? What would make a person wait so long?
When is now the right time
to feel alive?
Yeah.
you know, and be with someone else, you know, and unless you're like looking for that person to turn you on, you know, and you're looking outside of yourself for happiness, and that may be the case, you know, people may very well be doing that, you know.
Yeah. You have to wake up the relationship that you're in, or you have to leave it and go somewhere else if you're really going to prioritize having a certain quality of relationship in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And for some people, and a lot of people that we work with, that's in their destiny. Like, that's their calling. Their calling is to transcend their conditioning. Their calling is to create a certain kind of relationship, because that's what they're here to learn, and that's what they want to do, you know, to create a better legacy for their children, and that's what they're committed to doing.
Right.
And sometimes that means that you're actually going to prioritize the quality of the relational experience over the person that you picked. Now, they're not always mutually exclusive, and that's what, you know, you have to kind of figure out. Can I have both? Can I have this person and the experience I want to have? And there's a lot you have to do first to figure out if that's possible. You can't wait for that to happen and then make a decision. You have to take action and decide what's possible.
Exactly.
It's only by taking action can you figure out what's possible or not possible, right? But then I don't think there's anything wrong with prioritizing a certain quality of relationship in your life over the actual person that you're with. You know, I know that's not what all relationship coaches believe. A lot of people would say you picked this person. And I do believe we pick people for a reason, because there's always something to learn.
Totally.
Not all relationships are meant to last until you die. You know, not all relationships are meant for that, in my opinion. Don't you agree? I mean,
sometimes it's like you said, like, there are no mistakes, right? Because we learn from everything, and everything that we choose, like, we choose it because there's something that we need to see, to feel, to experience, to learn. But yeah, I mean, look, especially when we're younger people and we haven't really given a lot of thought to these things.
Yeah.
Settle for, you know, the first person that, you know, says, I love you or whatever. And, again, you know, choosing people for the wrong reasons, that thing before really connecting with this person, getting to know this person. And you don't do the work first of, are our values the same? You know, you have to have the same values as your partner.
Right.
And you have to, if you want to be happy and fulfilled, you're going to want a partner who you can really co-create and a life with by design.
Yeah.
And someone who really wants to do that with you, who shares in the same values as you do, and you're going to want to be in alignment with that person, okay? Because if you're not going to be able to get through the challenges and the tough times, because they will come. They will come.
Right.
And so I think that you can choose the wrong person, and sometimes that's the problem. You're with the wrong person.
Right. And so I think one way in terms of finding out, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, am I with the wrong person? I think the question you have to ask is, have I learned everything that I can learn in this relationship? Is there anything left to learn? And can I learn more with this person? Can waking up this marriage, can infusing it with something different, can bringing my changed and evolving and growing self, if I bring this into the relationship and shake it up a little bit, will we continue to grow? And if the answer is yes, then that's awesome. Then you don't have to settle, and you can still be with this person. One way or another, it needs to be shaken up. But if you try to learn more and you try to, like, initiate something that's in alignment with what your goals are with this person, and you recognize there literally is just a dead end everywhere I turn, then you know you're with the wrong person. It's such a hard, people always ask this question, how do I know if I'm with the wrong person? And it really is a hard thing to answer, but I think that is one of the keys right there is. If you know yourself and you know what you're here for and you have some dreams, you have a really good yardstick by which to measure if you're with the right person or not. And you don't have to have the same interests. You don't have to have the exact same goals, but they have to be in alignment. They cannot be mutually exclusive. Otherwise, then you will have to settle if you're with that person.
And it goes back to values, I think. And I can't remember what I was going to say now. It totally left me. Go ahead, babe.
Okay, that happened to me earlier too.
Huh?
Were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you know, there's a congruency to, you know, when you answer the question, is this the person I want to be with? You know, am I feeling fulfilled? Is there a natural joy that overcomes me, you know, every day when I look at this person? Not to say that every moment's going to be, you know, joyful, but
right, definitely not.
Yeah, but the bigger picture is overall, am I a contented person? Am I a happy person? And a lot of times we lose sight of the fact that, you know, we are always changing as people. And some of us are, you know, choose to grow a little faster than others. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with having, you know, different goals, but there has to be a congruency. There has to be a mutuality between the two of you where you understand and you choose to create the intention of coexisting in a place of healthy support for one another. Yeah. Regardless of the goals. But it comes down to the two of you ultimately being happy together.
Right.
You know? And so I think that's how people can begin to, if you have that question, you begin look at your relationship that way. You know, look at how you're helping one another and how you feel about, you know, supporting, you know, your significant other or your husband, you know, whatever. How does that look to you? How does it feel to you? You know, ask yourself that question. And I think you can begin to, you know, figure out whether you need to get on the phone with us or not. You know, because that's, you know, ultimately that's what you're going to need help in a lot of these areas. You know, because like I said, a lot of people have been dealing with this for many, many years, and a lot of people have had questions and they couldn't answer the question.
I think, you know, a way really to tell, it came back to me, if this is a right person or not is this person, like, it can always start with, if you're in some of these, you know, toxic relationship dynamics, of indifference, bad communication, little to no sex, and, you know, it's just not it's a very disconnected relationship in one or many ways. And you're not happy, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to take ownership of this. I'm going to lead the charge in this. I'm going to change myself first from the inside out. And, you know, I want to do this work together. You can start the work yourself, but if your partner is not eventually willing to join you in the process of rolling their sleeves up and doing the work with you, you are not with the right person. Unless you can resign yourself to being happy, truly happy and fulfilled in that relationship with this person who has zero desire to grow themselves as an individual and take ownership of their own growth in their life and do the relational work with you, right? Yeah. For me personally, I don't want to be with anyone who doesn't want to work on themselves. I do not.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But it really is a really personal choice. Like, what am I going to be okay with? But you have to be honest with yourself, because some people will tell themselves they can be okay with something, but they're not really. And then they're always resentful. And if you're hanging on to resentment, you haven't fully accepted it. If you can move into full acceptance and find, you know, meaning and purpose in your life outside of the limitations of your marriage, because let's face it, there's always going to be some limitation. There's always going to be something where it's like, well, that's not going to be exactly how I would have picked it. But in the context of the larger relationship, it's fine. I can let that go. But if you really can't, and it feels like it's going against your purpose and your legacy and your life dreams, and you've already taken action from the inside out, like you mentioned, Kelly, then I think you're in a much better position to make the decision of like, yeah, this isn't the right person for me. But the thing is that a lot of people make the mistake of making that decision before they've actually done the work on their side of the street. And so much is gained from that process, because it's not just thinking it through in your own head, you know, coming up with the answer and then deciding. It's actually taking action first to live the question, because actions will transform your consciousness.
Yes.
And I know it works the other way too. Consciousness will transform our actions. But in taking action to live the question, to find out what's possible, not being too attached to the outcome one way or the other. That's how we get the most information.
Right.
Which to make the decision. Then we can hold our head high and say, I made this decision from a place of deep knowing and deep certainty, not from a place of like, I'll never really know if I left the marriage too soon. You know,
Right.
what I mean? That's the thing.
The decision has to come first, and then everything follows.
Mhm.
And really, it's not until you make the decision about what you want and what you will have. It's not until you make that decision that the universe really starts to show up, and you can really, you know, have fun with it, play with it, and really, you know, change your life and your relationships for the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really how to get unstuck with settling. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, I have been settling, nothing is going to change until you make a decision. Until you say, I will not settle any longer. It comes with that decision, like you say, Kelly. Then the rest you'll set in motion. You might not know how to get unstuck, but first comes the decision, I am going to become unstuck. I am not going to go another day with things just staying as they are. Right? You have to get to the point where you're like tired of not knowing how to communicate without the arguments, or you're tired of living with like disconnection. You're tired of hanging on to resentment and not knowing how, you know, whatever it is for you that you're living with, that you're settling, you have to first get to the point where you're like, I won't accept that anymore. And I don't know if that means I'm going to stay or go, but I'm going to embark upon trying to wake things up, trying to do things from the inside out first.
Right.
That's really the first step in getting unstuck.
Yeah.
And you don't have to get so worried about what does that mean for 3 months from now or 6 months from now. You don't even have to know where it's going to end up. You just have to know that you're not willing to go as it has gone. You know, sometimes just any change is better than no change, even though it might not be, you know, some change ends up being just a catalyst for, you know, for greater change.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You just have to be willing to take that step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to know how to dislodge the pattern, right?
Yeah. Yeah, or you have to learn how.
Yeah. Well, exactly. But you have to be willing to be like, I'm going to dislodge the pattern. I'm going to go for what I want. Whether or not I can have it with this person, that remains to be seen, but you have to be willing to go for it.
Yeah.
So if you guys are listening to this and you really feel like you have been settling and you don't want to anymore, or if you have really like questions about whether or not you're settling, which I think if you do, you probably are, but sometimes it helps to kind of get a reality check on that.
Yeah.
But if you're ready to stop accepting less than what you know is possible, then we invite you to book a call with us and just explore the dynamics of your relationship, where you're at, you know, where that is in juxtaposition to where you want to go and what your dreams are. And if that's something that we can help you with, we will let you know. If there's, you know, to help you get unstuck or to recognize the ways in which you don't have to settle, and distinguishing between things you can let go of and things that you have to fight for. Yep. Because clarity is key in getting unstuck, right? So if you want to book a call with us, it's monikahoyt.com/talk. And you'll book a call with one of the three of us, and then, you know, just book yourself in whatever is convenient for you. Yeah. The other thing you can do too is you can ask questions on the comments below this video about any of what we talked about, and we will for sure go through and answer those questions. And then anything else you guys want to add that these guys can do if they're, you know, really struggling with this issue of settling?
No, go ahead, babe. Go right ahead.
I was just going to say, if you or someone you know is settling in your marriage or your relationship, make sure to like this video and share it, because people need to hear this message. Other people need to hear this message, because what I've found is a lot of people feel really isolated. They feel really alone. They feel like they're the only ones who are going through this, because we all know that everyone's trying to put on a fake face, the car, the fake house, whatever. And they're putting on a front for everyone, you know, around them, and focus on the external and not the internal. And so there are a lot of people struggling privately, you know, because it's isolating to be in a marriage or a relationship that when you get home at night, there ain't nothing going on, you know.
It's lonely.
Yucky, right? It's lonely. And so if you're going through this and you really like this message, it's helped you, it's served you, press like, press love, and share it with someone. Tag someone that you think needs to hear this message too, because we do this work because we we're here to serve. We're here to help people, let them know they're not here alone. We're here to help one another. So,
Amen.
like,
Amen. That's why we're having these conversations.
Exactly.
To really connect, because you're right, everybody's kind of stuck in their own house, having some of these questions, mulling things over and going into the nuances of them by themselves without anybody really to bounce it off of. So thanks for doing that.
Yep, that's what we're here for.
Awesome. You guys, thanks for joining me again today with this conversation. And
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll look forward to talking with you guys again next week.
Awesome.
Have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend.
Bye.
All right. See you soon.
Yep.